right, good morning, book friends, or afternoon, whatever time of day it is for you. I'm Kat, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a long overdue wrap up. I didn't do a wrap up in March, nor in April, so I'm going to combine the two. So how I'm going to do this video is, I think I'm just going to go by my star ratings, and it's going to be a mix between March and April. I'll just kind of do it that way. I think that's just easier. So let's go ahead and jump right on in. So my first ratings, I guess lack of ratings, I'm going to talk about DNFs. DNF means did not finish. So I have 3 DNFs to talk about. The first one I'm going to talk about is Even Now by Karen Kingsbury. As you can see, that's how far I went into the book. So about page 122, so chapter 10. And essentially this story is you follow these 2 teenagers, and they end up getting pregnant, and it is the story about how the parents, they want, like, the 2 sets of parents, their different perspectives on the situation. So the guy's parents are really wanting for him to continue on into college, to not get married, to basically not have an attachment to this young lady nor the child. And so they're really wanting to break up these 2 teenagers, and the girl's parents are a little more understanding. I mean, they still are not happy with the situation, but they really encourage her to make a decision to where she could give up the kid for adoption so she can continue on with her life. But I guess they're going to support her in whatever decision that she makes. So that's basically what I got from the book so far. The synopsis does say, like, you're viewing the daughter and her trying to find out where her mom went, who's her dad, and then she finds her mom's old journal, and that's the teenagers that you see in the book. So, and then the story kind of goes from the perspective of the 2 teenagers. So this is Christian fiction, but to me it was just hard for me to read, just because it's just not a perspective I usually read from. I wrote that, you know, I wasn't expecting to read through the perspective of a teenage pregnancy. I know it doesn't justify teenage pregnancy. However, some decisions being made in this book were pretty muddled by the fact that the main characters were minors. So they were struggling between, like, should we make more of a decision because we're parents, but they were still kind of minors. So it seemed very muddled to me. And I wasn't sure how I was feeling about it. Plus, it was hard to connect with the characters. And then I said there was a character who decided to abandon a situation that was a complete miscommunication. It actually seemed very extreme to me. And I guess by then I was like, you know, since I'm not connecting with the characters, this wasn't the book that I thought it was going to be, like, perspective-wise. And just that this miscommunication trope, which is a trope that I'm not really fond of, I was just like, okay, it was really extreme, so I decided to put the book down. So, all right, I'm going to try not to talk so much about these books in length like that, but the second DNF I had was this one. It's called Let the Children Come, A Story of Faith Gone Courageous by D.C. Lee. Again, didn't make it super far in the book. I usually try to give the book 80 to 100 pages before I decide if I'm going to DNF it or not. I made it to 82, which is like chapter 20, so which is a lot of chapters in this book. This is a debut book, so essentially this book is about a young man who is sitting in his Christian college sermon, you know, just kind of going through a normal day. And then they have the special speaker who comes up and basically challenges the audience at that time and is like, you know, are you listening to the call of God, and what is he calling you to do? And it's something like that, just kind of ignites his spirit a little bit. The first chapter really intrigued me because the first chapter talks about these group of teenagers living in Venezuela. And it was kind of creepy though, because these group of teenagers sneak out at night and they go to this wooded area and they visit one of the, I guess, natives of the country, and essentially they are, you know, smoking and using certain substance abuse, and kind of get involved in this ritual that does go a little into detail, and you kind of see like spiritual warfare there, and so you're seeing it through their eyes and the little boy's eyes, who the teenager older brother brought his little brother, and so the little boy is terrified seeing like this demonic activity happening, and it was kind of freaky at first. And then the second chapter, you're in the perspective of that young college boy in the United States. So that kind of set the tone, but I was really interested to see like where it was going. So anyway, the college boy, what is his name? John. And so for John, I mean, you know, he gets this calling, and then it goes into like the backstory of the Parker family, and how like these men were great and they had a lot going for them, and then how that translates back to Parker, and then you meet other characters, and then it goes to their backstory. So there's a lot of like backstory that you meet with almost every single character. So I felt like it was a lot of details that didn't really need to be part of the story, and it felt like it was branching out on little rabbit trails. So that was one thing I didn't really care for in this book. And then like chapter 20, we're still not in Venezuela. Also, it went to very extremes in this book too, about like certain situations, like John feeling called to go to Venezuela, but like even the president of the university is against it and is even using like, is this really God calling you? Just because John's this star athlete and they don't want to lose this star athlete. So to me, that felt like it was very extreme. That was basically it. So I just decided to put the book down for that. So, all right, the last DNF I have is part of my Read Around the World challenge. I don't know if that vlog is coming up before this video, but I did DNF Cold Victory by Karl Marlantes, and I'm that far in. I'm on page 64, and for this one, I said, you know, I was very intrigued by the cover. It was a part of history that I had no idea about. This is set in Finland during the Cold War, and I had no idea like Finland's involvement in like World War II and who they fought with. I think that at one point they fought with the Russians or the Germans, and they switched sides between the two. So I was very intrigued, but you follow a woman named Louise, and she is married to this army guy who, U.S. Army guy, who is originally from Finland. And so he gets promoted to go to Finland and essentially do like undercover work for the United States. But the United States, I think at this point, is neutral in the Cold War that's going on. But at the same time, you have like the Russians are occupying parts of Finland. And so essentially she knows that she has to watch what she says and, you know, kind of be on the lookout for spies and everything. So kind of like the gist of it. And so it was very like atmospheric. I mean, I liked learning about bits and pieces of Finland in this book, but what stopped me from reading it was the sexual content. I did skim over it. It is between husband and wife, and you do meet two separate people, two sets of couples, the American couple and then this Russian guy and his wife. And the Russian guy actually knew Luis's husband, the American guy, and they kind of made this bet to go do like this ski race, just for a personal bet. Anyways, so you meet two separate couples and they both have, scenes. So I felt like if that was, happening here, the rest of the book might get more and more detailed, I guess. And there is a character in here that was known to commit atrocities with women who were minors, and they did go into detail about some of the things he did with them. So it was just not a book for me. So I decided to stop reading the book. So I'm gonna go to my 3-star read. And my 3-star read is also from that same vlog, but this one is Under an Amber Sky. I don't know who it's from, but it's right there. I think it's like Rose Alexander. This one, you follow a woman named Sophie. She suffers from this tragic incident at the very beginning of the book, which causes her to kind of uproot her life and move to this country. And she basically is starting over. And as she's starting over, you're getting like her like growth through this grief that she is experiencing. I like how the book talked about how grief comes in cycles, and there's not it's a one and done sort of deal. So I really appreciated that about the book, because if you ever gone through grief, it comes in waves and in cycles. And when you think you kind of went through or gotten through something and it comes back, it's, it might be less intense, but it's still there, and there's a healing process through it. So I really appreciate that the book brought that perspective in. Other things about the book, I just felt like it was okay. I thought it was gonna be dual perspective. Again, what I thought I was reading actually ended up not happening. Instead, this lady finds letters in her house, and she is intrigued by the owners who previously occupied the house during World War II. And I thought we were going to see dual perspective from the couple in World War II, but you only read the 6 letters. And then that's all you kind of get. So Sophie is slowly getting those translated and is getting a bit of history during the time of the occupation of Italy, having an occupation over Montenegro. And you kind of see like what happens to this couple. So it was interesting, but I just said I just didn't connect with the characters. I said that there was some innuendos that were talked about that I just kind of rolled my eyes at, kept going though. And then I said there was one fade to black scene, but other than that, everything was just okay to me. So I have a 4-star read. Actually, I have 2 4-star reads. So my first 4-star read I have right here, and that is So Brave, Young, and Handsome by Leif Enger. And this one, you follow a man named Monty, who is this author in Minnesota, and he one day meets this man named, I have to keep looking, Glendon. Okay, Glendon. Glendon just shows up on this little river boat, and essentially Monty agrees to go with Glyndon after, you know, of course, they got to know each other, and Glyndon lives there for a while and all of that. But Glyndon decides that he wants to go back to his wife he abandoned and basically apologize for abandoning her all these years. And you kind of get a sense like Glyndon might have been an outlaw. And so Monty agrees to accompany him all the way to see Glyndon's wife, Blue. He calls her Blue. And it's like a cross-country trip between these two men. You have another perspective. He's an ex-Pinkerton, and I don't know what his name is. Oh, Charles. Okay, Charles. And Charles has been on this pursuit to find Glyndon. And it's really interesting. I'm not a Western type, like, genre reader, but I found myself pulled into the story. I did care about the characters. I thought Charles, the ex-Pinkerton, was an interesting character. And honestly, I feel like you could do a good book study over this, and you can get many different opinions and perspectives about, like, maybe who Charles might represent, or just you know, some of the themes in here and the topics. I just found it very fascinating, and I felt the same way with the other book I read from Leaf Inger, which was Peace Like a River. I think would make a great book club book. So if any of you out there are looking for a book club book, I think these would make great conversations. There are some medical things in this book that some could find disturbing, but I didn't find it too disturbing. All right. So that was 4-star. So the other 4-star book I had written down was Life Flight by Lynette Easton or Easton. I think it's Easton. My initial thoughts was I did not like the audio version. I'm just going to say that right now. It was not my favorite, but I thought the plot was very intriguing. So this one you follow, and I think EMS is the correct term, but she is a pilot, and she goes on this rescue mission in the mountains, and it's like raining and it's terrible, like a terrible storm, but she's like going to help this person, you know, who's critically injured, and she kind of gets stuck on the mountain, and she ends up running into this circumstance where she comes face to face with a killer. And then the story kind of ensues from there a little bit. You know that there's this stalker killer, and he's actually like after her, and you kind of find out everything else along the way, but it goes with the perspective of her. Her name is Penny, and I said I was really creeped out by the serial killer. There were certain like his techniques that he did. It was very creepy, and sometimes you got his perspective in this book, which added to the creepiness. I said I felt like the story was a bit extreme in some places, like scenarios and stuff, but it was fast-paced and it was very engaging. And I said that the Christian fiction part, because it is Christian fiction, it was, you know, wasn't a huge theme, but I would probably give it a 2 out of 3. But I do plan on continuing the series. And this book does talk about like how some of the characters had their own traumas, so there were depth to these characters. So I will definitely continue this series. Okay, next is 4.5-star reads. First one I'm going to talk about is The Royal Artisan by Tessa Afshar. And so this one is book 2 in the Queen Esther's Court series. And you do not have to read these in order, but I'm a perfectionist. I like to do that. But this one, essentially, you follow this artisan. Her name is Susanna. And she actually works in Haman's pottery workhouse shop. And this was, right before obviously Haman, um, tries to annihilate the Jews and whatnot. So she is Jewish. And so you get her perspective through like Haman trying to make that plan to annihilate the Jews, to the aftermath. And she is an orphan. She has a lot of similarities with Esther, Queen Esther. So you kind of see a little bit of parallel there, but she's an orphan. She, works with the pottery and she is well known for it. And then the other perspective, obviously, is the love interest, and he is Persian. And I would say this trope, there's a trope of a second chance romance in this book. So if that is a trope you like, you may like this one. I enjoyed it. I thought it was an interesting perspective. I really liked learning about pottery as I read this book. And yeah, the second 4.5-star read is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This is a second read for me. And I mean, again, I really enjoyed the book. This time around, I mentioned before, had quite a few more swear words than I thought that it had. Thankfully, it was towards the end of the book. It's not like the whole book or anything like that, but there were definitely more than 1 or 2 swear words in here. So just letting you know that. But yeah, I remembered, how much like fun it was to find out things through Ryland's eyes. If you haven't known what Project Hail Mary is about, I'm not going to tell you a lot about it because the less you know, the better I feel. But it's just about Ryland who wakes up and he's in space and he has no idea how he got there, why he's there, what happened, and just it's a fun ride, I think. So I have a vlog on this, so you can check out that vlog if you're interested. But I did see the movie and I shared some thoughts in there. All right, almost done. We are in my 5-star reads. And so my first 5-star read that I'm going to talk about is going to be Resistance by Jennifer A. Nielsen. And this one is not a middle grade. Actually, it is a YA book. I could see why it was a YA book because the subject matter and just some of the things in there should be a little higher in terms, I think, of like, maturity level. This one, essentially, you follow a Polish girl, and she is part of this resistance group that essentially wants to help, the Jewish people in the ghettos. And that's how they fight against the Nazis. They're like smuggling supplies, smuggling kids out of the ghettos. And it was so heartbreaking. A lot of the things that she has witnessed, gone through, I just felt like nothing went right in this book. Don't get attached to a lot of these characters because I felt like your heart will get broken. So it was a lot and it was intense. And I think, Jennifer Nielsen, she did a great job writing this book. My last 2 5-star reads are in a series. So I guess this would be a 5-star series, but this is a YA series and it is the Skyward series. First book is Secrets in the Mist and second book is Blood Secrets. And I mean, this was my first steampunk book, I feel. It's a duology. I mean, I loved the concept. This had something to do with this mist that kind of creates spores or has spores in it that a human, breathed that in. The spores took over their bodies and they're kind of like zombies. And so you want to stay away from the mist. So people are living on like these mountains up in the you know, the higher you are, the more elite you were. So you follow Cassie. She is a child whose parents died in the mist or were purged into the mist because of course, there's only so much room to live on the mountaintops and the mist is constantly rising. So her parents were purged into the mist. And so she has just been living on her own, going from place to place. And eventually she finds herself as a skydiver, which is like, or a diver. And essentially she lives on this ship with all these other divers. They take on like special projects or special missions. They, you know, wear a gas mask and they glide into the mist and they find artifacts or anything people would want, and then they bring it back. And if they have a client, they give it to the client, or if they don't, then they can sell things, they sell things. And so that's kind of like her new purpose. And then you follow another perspective, this man who is of the elite families, and he's trying to find a way to eradicate this mist or find ways for humans to live within the mist. And so, you know, their worlds meet, and it's such a great story. It can be a little creepy if you're not into like zombie stories. I'm not, but I thoroughly enjoyed this. It is Christian fiction. I would say about maybe a 1.5 out of a 3 scale. But I really enjoyed just the uniqueness of this, and I would highly recommend this series, even if you're not a YA reader. I am not, but it didn't have a lot of the tropes that I don't care for in YA. As far as I remembered, I don't think there was a miscommunication trope. There might have been like a slight one, but it didn't get like super extreme for me. So yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed this wrap up that I had, and have you read any of them? Let me know, and I will see you guys in another video soon. Bye.